Hi, I'm Justin Sears, a product marketing manager at Hortonworks. In October 2013, the Apache Software Foundation released version 2 of Hadoop. And a couple days after that, we released Hortonworks Data Platform version 2.0, which I'll refer to as HDP2. In today's brief product tour, we'll talk about Apache Hive 12, which is part of HDP2. We'll start with some basic definitions. What is Apache Hive, what is Apache Tez, and what is the Stinger initiative? Then we'll move into what actually was released in version 12 of Hive. And finally, we'll talk about the future roadmap for Hive and what's coming next. I'm very lucky to be joined here today by Owen OMalley. Owen is one of the original architects on Apache Hadoop. He was on the team at Yahoo in 2005 that began working on Hadoop, and he did some of the early work on MapReduce and HDFS. Since then, Owen is one of the co-founders of Hortonworks. He's also on the project management committee of Apache Hadoop, Apache Tez, and Apache Hive. And of course, he's a committer on Apache Hive. I'm also joined by Carter Shanklin. Carter is a product manager at Hortonworks, and he's responsible for data services and movement. So this includes Apache Hive and the Stinger initiative, as well as HBase, Flume, Scoop, and Oozie. So what is Hive, Owen?
Hive is a framework for taking a user's SQL queries and running them on a Hadoop cluster so that they get high bandwidth access to their data. And they can still use the familiar SQL languages that they're familiar with from using databases.
Oh, so they can use their existing skills in Hive.
Exactly.
And what is Apache Tez?
Tez is a brand new framework that we're developing that replaces MapReduce as the computation engine for Hive. And it provides a much richer alphabet for Hive to use so that it can be more efficient.
And I know we're also going to need to know about org files for this conversation. What's an org file?
Org file is a new file format that was added to Hive in Hive 11, and it provides a columnar store with some advanced capabilities. First of all, it provides run length encoding for all the data types. It also adds dictionary encoding so that it's much more compressed.
So now, Carter, bring these things together. What's the Stinger initiative?
You know, the Stinger initiative overall, it's an attempt to make Hive quite a bit substantially faster, but also bring standard SQL semantics and standard SQL processing to Hive. So Hive has always been very well proven for very highly scaled batch workloads. So that might be reporting workloads or ETL or processing workloads of that nature. As people are packing more and more data into their Hadoop clusters, they're finding they want to put more use cases there. And one thing in particular is people want to be able to start to look at their data more interactively. So increasing Hive's performance 100x really enables people to do this interactive processing using SQL in Hadoop. The Stinger initiative is really broken out into a number of components. ORC file, for example, is an important piece because it provides high compression. It allows you to minimize the amount of data that you're reading to serve a query. That's one piece. Another piece is just a more intelligent Hive runtime to create better plans and better queries, run things more efficiently in a native way. Tez, in a lot of ways, is kind of the final piece of the Stinger puzzle in the sense that Tez allows SQL processing to be expressed much more natively and in a much more efficient way. So combining all of these pieces together is something that allows us to get that 100x performance boost. If you think about Hadoop, traditionally, Hadoop is really two things. It's a distributed file system and it's a MapReduce framework. They were very tightly coupled, but Yarn helps to disassociate that coupling a little bit and makes MapReduce as really one application that can be used for processing data. So MapReduce is very proven for batch processing, but now we start to see the introduction of Tez in Stinger Phase 3. Tez sort of existing as a peer of MapReduce, just another application that you can use.
I see.
But one that allows you to, it actually does unlock that interactive data processing.
So what's new in Hive 12?
Hive 12 actually brings a lot of capabilities around SQL processing, standard SQL processing in Hadoop. In Hive 12, we added a number of data types that are very familiar to people, specifically the varchar and the date data type, you know, the kind of technical things, but very meaningful for people who have existing SQL databases and a lot of SQL skills. Not only does it make it easier to develop data processing applications on top of Hadoop, but your tools become interoperable. And that's a big thing. So BI tools, the MicroStrategies, the Tableaus, the business objects, all of these things can suddenly talk to Hadoop in a much more native and much more natural way.
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about speed. So I know that the goal was 100x. With Stinger Phase 2, how far down that path are we to 100x?
So let me back up and paint the picture. So with Stinger Phase 1, we introduced some essentially more intelligent Hive runtime, and that allowed us to get, say, a 40 to 45x boost on a pretty broad range of queries. So one of the big boosts that we've introduced in Hive 12 is if you have a big Hive warehouse, if you have a lot of partitions, queries will run a lot faster than they used to. And we've heard anecdotally from some of the users, they're seeing on the queries that they run a 2 to 3x speed up just because of that feature alone.
We cut down the number of queries to the SQL database and made it much faster. We also added a bunch of features to Hive that like predicate pushdown into orc. So for each
predicate pushdown into orc. Okay, you'll need to explain that.
Yes, exactly. So your query, if it's scanning a lot of data, but for a pretty rare condition. So let's say you're looking for people who are older than 99 years old. Orc will record for every 10,000 rows what the minimum and maximum values for each of the columns is. And so it can skip over whole sets of 10,000 rows without even reading the data.
Phase 2 has been delivered with Hive 12 and HTTP 2. I know the work is ongoing and there's lots of momentum behind it. What's coming up with the next phase of Stinger?
One of the big things that we've been working on that's really exciting is called vectorization. So what we realized was that the Hive was spending too much time going between virtual method to virtual method to virtual method, and that we could improve the performance really substantially by, instead of calling each row and having it process each piece of the query individually, we're going to take 1,000 rows at a time and process that 1,000 rows with a single operation. And that lets us get much, much better throughput on the CPU.
So vectorization was underway but not delivered with Phase 2, and it's planned
Correct.
Delivered in Phase 3.
We started vectorization work back in May, I believe. And actually some of the early prototypes were incredibly exciting. You think of Java as not being as fast as C, but in practice what we've seen is that with the vectorization work that we, on a simple prototype that we did, we were able to be able to process 100 million rows per second on a laptop.
Wow.
So it's really fast even in Java. We were really amazed.
And Carter, what else is on the roadmap? What else is coming up?
So TES is absolutely, the TES integration is absolutely the big thing, but beyond that, there's additional SQL compatibility that we'll be adding, and a lot of that is actually extremely meaningful. More data types, the char data type, for example, kind of rounds out the data type compatibility story. We're expanding that SQL compatibility, getting to the point where, you know, if you're running SQL on one system, you can pretty much just lift and shift that into Hadoop without any rewriting. That's really our goal.
You talked about the TES integration. What still needs to happen to get to 100x, and how does TES play a role in that?
We need to release the software, and that's something we plan to do in Q1 of 2014, you know, sort of round out that Phase 3. So that Hive and TES integration needs to happen. It needs to be stabilized. It needs to be production quality and production ready. We're very excited about this because what we've seen actually in our performance labs is we've actually gone beyond 100x in a lot of cases, and so we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
So, you know, TES just overall really does kind of deliver on that promise of moving Hadoop beyond batch and actually into supporting interactive data exploration. For the existing Hive users, we think upgrading to Hive 12 is just there's no way to lose. It's an absolute win.
Well, I've had a great time talking with you both about the Stinger initiative and Hive 12. Owen, thanks for sharing all your expertise.
Thanks for having me, Justin. It's been good being here.
And Carter, thanks for talking about all the things that came out in Hive 12 and what's coming up in the roadmap with Stinger Phase 3.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us for this brief product tour on Apache Hive 12. We talked about three things. We started with some basic definitions. What is Apache Hive? What is Apache TES? What is an org file? Then we talked about what actually got released with Apache Hive 12. And finally, we looked into the future at the roadmap and what's coming up with Stinger Phase 3 and improvements to Hive in the future. If you're as excited as we are about all those changes, please visit us on our website, Hortonworks.com. We've got an Apache Hive page there. And then on our blog, we'll be posting as improvements come along in the months to come. Of course, if you want minute-by-minute updates anytime something changes with Hive, the best way to get those is to follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much.